Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Welcome to the Slumpbuster with Ju-Ju and Dre, episode 8, recording here on Friday, September 20th, 2019. Find us on all major streaming platforms. On today's episode, we welcome in Aris to help us discuss all things college football, including the California State Senate passing the controversial pay-for-play bill, Tim Tebow's reaction to it, and Jalen Hurts' Heisman chances. Without further ado, welcome to the show.
Alrighty, welcome in. This is a very special episode. This is going to be the 8th episode of the Slumpbuster with Ju-Ju and Dre. But this is going to be a birthday episode for our fantasy football correspondent, Aris Blakeney. Now,
Party.
now, I know it's tradition to get some birthday spankings, but I'm sure your mom gave you more than enough this past Sunday, right?
Hey. All right, let's clear the air real quick.
Are we sure we got the right Blakeney for our fantasy football?
We're gonna set the record straight. All right. Yes, my mom beat me, but I was the second highest scoring team in the league.
That happened to you against Jay too in our other league. So this keeps happening to Aaron.
I was the third highest scoring person in that league, and I lost. So I would have only lost to Jay and one other person. And I ended up winning in my work league because Carson Wentz stunk it up. So it didn't turn out to be as bad of a week as I thought it was going to be. But, yes, my mom still beat me with an asterisk because I was still the second highest scoring team that week.
I don't know about that asterisk. It's either who has more points or not, man.
Well, when you guys are throwing me under the bus, I got to defend myself, right?
Okay, gotcha. So, like a Cobra, when you're backed into the corner, you just got to strike out.
Exactly.
All right. Well, speaking of striking out, so Tim Tebow on First Take was so defensive this week because the NCAA went to war with California over the Fair Pay to Play Act that just was passed through the California State Senate. Right now, this is currently sitting in their government still. It's going to be 30 days for their governor, Gavin Newsom, to make a decision on whether or not to sign this bill. What this would basically allow is for players to be able to benefit from their name, from their likeness. So basically, when it comes to stuff like the NCAA games or jersey sales or stuff like that, players actually have a chance to make a buck now. It's a very heated discussion. A lot of people are definitely going to be on the anti-NCAA side. Where are you guys kind of sitting with this argument?
Bro, pay the players. Yes, they're getting paid in education. Yes, it's an unbelievable opportunity for them. But the schools and the NCAA both are raking in millions and billions of dollars on the backs of these players. Was it 2% only goes pro level in football, less than that in basketball. So pay the players. They deserve it. Maybe if you don't give them a weekly or a big check, maybe put it in a trust for them for when they graduate their college career. But I'm definitely pro pay the players.
Yeah, I'm the exact same way. I think the thing is, right, so there's quite a bit, and everybody says, oh, you know, these players are getting paid to go to school and they get their school paid for and all this stuff. And granted, like a lot of student athletes do get treated better than even some of your academic students that are just on a full ride just for academics, right? But when you look at it, though, there's really only 4 sports that offer full ride. So you got football, basketball, women's basketball, and women's volleyball. Those are the only real 4 sports that offer full ride. And only 1% of athletes really get that full ride scholarship. So the majority, so 99% of your athletes that are competing at the college level, especially the D1 level, they're not getting everything covered, right? So why not allow them to make some money? Because a lot of times they're not able to work anyways. Like sometimes they sign agreements in which they say, hey, I'm not going to have a summer job just so I can make summer workouts, right? I'm not going to do anything that could possibly jeopardize my amateur status. And so a lot of these guys go without making that much money. And when you grow up from being poor, which a lot of these athletes are, they don't have a chance to really cover the rest of their schooling, especially if you're going to an expensive school. Like we'll talk about a USC or UCLA where tuition's $50,000 or something a semester or a year. But if you're growing up and your mom is a single mother and she only makes $20,000 a year, there's no way you're going to be able to afford that.
Well, that's definitely true. Definitely when you come from a perspective of these players aren't necessarily coming from the best backgrounds right now. They definitely have a finite amount of time to realistically make any money. And a lot of these guys, like you mentioned, only 2% of them go to the pro level. So the other 98% may never really have a great opportunity to earn outside of necessarily their community, maybe becoming a insurance salesman just based off kind of like being a local hero or something later on. So these guys really need to take advantage of their time and their platform while they're at the collegiate level, especially if they're playing for like a big name school like a USC or a Stanford or UCLA, you name it. So a lot of the pushback that's coming from the NCAA is going to come in regards to competitive balance. Now, one of the big arguments you can throw out there off the bat is there really competitive balance anyway in the NCAA football right now? Because we're talking about potentially seeing Clemson versus Alabama episode 5 coming up here soon. What do you think this kind of does to change the landscape of college football?
Well, we got to look at it this way. So this is just a California bill right now, so it's only going to affect California schools. Has the Pac-12 really done anything recently? No. They're going to still go to the big name schools. If you wanted to go to California, you're still going to try to go to California. If you're only getting recruited from SEC schools, you're still going to get recruited from California schools. So I don't think this is going to affect it much. Maybe instead of going to Miami, you go to USC, but then you lose out on the opportunity to go for a national championship.
Well, I'll say with social media, we're more connected to other parts of the country than we never really have been before. So like players, in terms of recruiting, these coaches have more outreach than they've really had in past generations. When it comes to this law in particular, and the players are making a decision on where to go for college, wouldn't kind of the thought process go, well, I could go to Alabama and arguably be with the best coach in the country in Nick Saban, or Clemson with the Debo Samuel, or I could go to California right now and get paid, especially when talking about those high-end college athletes, those 4-star, 5-star recruits. Wouldn't they want to head to the best opportunity for them to make the money now?
I was thinking about this a little bit, and you're right. I think the only ones that would really be attracted to it would be your high-end quarterbacks and your really big receivers, right? Like even your really good defensive players, they're not that well known. I mean, some of them, right? Like you've had Troy Polamalu's, right? And you've got a few other like really good like linebackers or safeties that you're like, okay, or corners, right? That you're like, oh yeah, I'd buy that person's jersey. But for the most part, it's really only going to affect like your really good offensive players when it comes to most sports, right? Even in basketball, not a lot of people are known for like, hey, they play good defense, right? So I'm going to buy their jersey. It's more, hey, are they a superstar? So I think California might be able to attract some superstars, but for the most part, right, like when you're building a team, you're not going to be able to build a team of all 4 or 5-star recruits. And those guys that are not your 5-star recruits that are, you know, an offensive talent, they're not really going to get that many endorsements, right? Like I am not going to buy, let's say, you know, the left guard's jersey for UCLA, right? Or even the center's jersey for UCLA. I might buy the quarterbacks though, and I might buy a pair of cleats that the quarterback is wearing. So I think it might attract some of those really, really good high-level talents, but I don't think it'll be enough to really outweigh, like Aris is saying, the Alabamas and the Clemsons that have a history of winning.
But in terms of competitive balance, those high-end quarterbacks, they shift the entire landscape more than any other player or any other position. In general, with the kind of advancements in the offensive passing attack that have come at both the college and pro level, that's really where it matters right now. I know that there has been Alabama has made a living off of all these high-end defensive players. But if you can steal some of those flash players, let's say Trevor Lawrence, instead of going to Clemson, goes to USC, then that really changes everything in correlation to the Pac-12. You make USC like a favorite consistently.
Would you rather play for Chip Kelly or Dabo? Which coach would give you right now the best opportunity to go to the NFL? Chip Kelly at UCLA or Dabo at Clemson?
When it comes to that argument between Dabo or Chip Kelly, we're talking about the infusion of the almighty dollar into this argument. And in most debates, especially in a capitalistic society, the dollar tends to win out when making these life-changing decisions, whether where to go to college or where to work or where to move, etc.
I see what you're saying. I just feel like you're still going to want to go to a coach that gives you a better opportunity to make it to the pros, where instead of making, say $200,000 in 4 years, you can make $1 million in 1 year at the NFL level. So I still think you're still going to have the parity. The bill negates any college team in California from participating in championship games. So now you can't win a national championship under this bill. So if you want to have that record, say, oh, I won 4 national championships in a row, are you going to go to UCLA, USC, Stanford, or are you going to try to go to a school where you can actually compete for a national championship?
Well, what I'm saying is in a few years, wouldn't it be possible that these teams are competing for national championship because they're able to recruit the best players by adding this little extra incentive on top of it? One thing, too, I feel like this kind of underrated in talking about this argument. So there's the underground booster society when it comes to these Southern schools. Like we all know that players have been getting money under the table. We joke about it all the time. Honestly, though, it's kind of funny when you think about this, because when it comes to endorsement money and all that, this is money that the players have to actually report out there to their local governments, whereas the underground money can be a little bit more shady on the underside. So would that also be kind of something you have to weigh? Is it necessarily a net benefit from that perspective?
I think anytime that you have, right, these weird underground economies, it sort of halts the, I guess, legitimate economies, right? And so I guess the point you were trying to make earlier, right, that, oh, people might go to California, it might actually not do them all that well if Alabama and Clemson maybe are paying their kids under the table. But I mean, I think this is another reason for why they should, I think, legalize or put this in the law, I think, nationwide. It's just because we do know that it's already happening, right? And we do know that kids are either receiving, monetary reimbursement or something equivalent, right? Like they're getting a nice car that's paid for, they're getting a nice house and stuff like that. I think kids will still want to be sponsored because at least it gets their name out there and it, you start to build a reputation and you already are officially signed with Nike or whoever it is. But that being said, like, I think there is something to the underground economy. And I think it actually does take away a little bit of power from this California law.
See, and I think we keep going back to the football part of this. I think this will have a bigger impact on the basketball side. We already saw it with Arizona State paying to have players come to them. Now they can actually pay players to come play at UCLA, Stanford, UC Berkeley, San Diego State, all those schools. We already saw it with basketball. I think this is going to have the biggest effect because now Zion Williamson can sign his shoe deal 1 year before going into the NBA. There's going to be even bigger deals thrown around now. So I think that the basketball side is going to have a bigger impact on this than the football side will.
Well, there's going to be a trickle down into all major sports that are coming out of the college game. So you mentioned, Aundre, that only a few of these sports can benefit from a full ride scholarship per se. So when we're talking about this argument too, a lot of things people don't really mention is, so we mostly focus on the football, basketball side of things because those are the most revenue generating sports. However, things that's kind of lost in this argument is how do athletes in volleyball, wrestling, track and field, swimming, and all this feel about this law in general? I'm kind of actually glad too that it's just in endorsements right now, because I don't know if a lot of people have really factored in what it would take for the universities themselves to pay out these athletes. And I feel like too, some of those smaller sport athletes might also feel like they're getting the shaft in this whole thing.
Well, yeah. So like swimming is going to be able to get their own endorsement with Speedo. Wrestling is going to be able to get endorsements through headgear and shoes. So I think those schools, like those sports, will actually be able to benefit from this as well because they're going to get sponsorships centric to their sport, whereas they might not get the Nike, Adidas, Reebok, Under Armour deal. They might be able to get those smaller niche deals that have to deal with their actual sport.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think, so a few things I want to touch on, Ju-Ju, that you had sort of mentioned, right, is to make it clear, this is not the NCAA that's actually paying these athletes, right? So it's not like the schools themselves are, handing a $100,000 check to the starting whatever, right? Starting quarterback, starting point guard, anything like that. It is, they're just able to make money off endorsements, which I do think is the way that it should be, because then you get into these disparity issues of, maybe like you had mentioned, the soccer players don't get paid as much as the football players or the basketball players. So I am glad that it is just endorsements right now. That being said, for these small time sports, college a lot of times is sort of the epitome for them. So we know that there's like the MLB, right, NHL, NBA, NFL. But for a lot of these sports, there really is just the college level. And then after that, there's maybe a chance to compete in the Olympics, but they don't really have like that much of a pro following. And so for a lot of these guys, and girls, right? I think it's going to be a great opportunity, and this will be sort of their level of pros as they work, their entire life to get up to the college level. And that's where they get to make their money, because after college, there's no real opportunity for a lot of your track runners, right? Like there's not really a professional league for running track, or even for wrestling. If you don't win a gold medal in the Olympics, you're not going to really get paid out appropriately, right? Like you're not going to ever make millions of dollars. And so for these small time sports, right, your sort of niche sports, I think it's a fantastic thing.
Aundre, quick question. As a wrestler, would you rather make $100,000 or win a national championship?
So, I mean, I think wrestling is slightly different in that if you're good enough to win a national championship as an individual, right, you can do it wherever. And so you might give up on possibly a team championship, right? So if you're not going to a Penn State or Oklahoma State or an Iowa, which are historically the dominant powers, yeah, you probably will not win a team championship, but you can just as well win an individual championship at UCLA, which doesn't have a wrestling team, but I'm just saying that for example, right? So I guess it would be more of a Stanford that has a team. And for me, like, I think that might be the way to do it. Yeah, it's nice to win as a team, but if I can get paid and prove that I'm still the best on my own, right, and I'm making $100,000, I think I personally would take that route.
No, so this bill won't allow you to compete in any national championship title. So then you'd have to choose, go to
that's true,
Pittsburgh, or go to UCLA or Stanford, as you said.
Yeah. Well, I guess we will say something. So I think you're right. I think that's what's going to end up happening, though. I think that's only a threat from the NCAA right now. I don't know if the NCAA has made that official that you would be ruled out.
Just to clarify and make that clear, so basically what Aris is referring to is the NCAA right now is trying to strong-arm the California state government by saying that they would rule out a lot of their schools from competing for national titles moving forward if this bill does pass. Aris, you were telling us that fact about USC's history in regards to national championships. If you want to.
Yeah, so California has 4 of the top 10 schools with Division I titles. So since D1 NCAA has been a thing, they have 4 of the top 10 schools with the most titles. Stanford at number 1 with 647. So that is team plus individual. So you might get a swimming record or swimming division title or a football championship. Then you come to USC, then comes Texas, back to UCLA, and then Florida. So they have 3 in the top 10. And then at number 8 is UC Berkeley. So now all of those schools aren't allowed, if NCAA does go through with this, aren't allowed to compete for national titles. So now Stanford, number 1 school in D1 history for titles, is no longer allowed to compete for a title. So now as somebody who is a swimming superstar, are they going to want to still go to Stanford, where maybe they have the number 3 swimming program in the nation, or are they going to want to go to UNLV just outside of California? Are they going to want to go to there if they have the best and they want to compete for a national title? So that's where I think you're still going to get those people that, they wanted to prove that they're the best rather than get paid. You're still going to get that parity throughout the nation.
Yeah, I could see sort of your point right there. That being said, though, I think for a lot of those sports that we're talking about outside of your major team sports, right, there's the chance to do that at the Olympic level. And so if you really think that you're the best, right, like, doesn't matter if you're the best diver and you win an NCAA championship, when you can make a whole bunch of money, and then you also get to train for the Olympics and prove that you're the best in the world, right? So if you really do think you're at that sort of level, I still think a lot of people would err on the side of, I might as well make my money now. The other thing too is, and this is the argument for, should they allow, kids right out of high school to compete in the NBA, or, should they reduce the amount of time that you have to spend in college to go into the NFL? Because every single year that you're in college, you're adding, more and more risk to your body, right? So there's a chance that you tear your ACL, right, your freshman year. But if you can make it through your freshman year, well, now there's a chance you do it your sophomore year and your junior year. So the longer that you stay in college, the more and more you risk never being able to have that big payday. And so to me, you might as well make your hundreds of thousands of dollars while you can and still get in some good competition to prove that, hey, I can still compete at the pro level, right? Doing it at a UCLA or wherever, but I'm still getting paid. Whereas, hey, I can prove that I'm really good at UNLV or wherever it is, but then that you run the risk of getting hurt and then you never get that big payday.
Yeah, that's definitely something that a lot of these athletes have to consider when it comes to their decisions on where to go to school. Like we said, there's a 30-day signing period when it comes to Governor Newsom's decision on this thing. One of the biggest opponents of this deal is Tim Tebow. He was on First Take the other day, said a lot of similar stuff we've heard before from the NCAA in regards to this subject. He mentioned his personal experiences, such as being one of the highest selling jerseys in the nation and not wanting the money. What did you kind of take away from Tim Tebow's interview? Did you agree with anything he said?
He said that it could ruin amateurism. We still don't know how this will play out. I personally think there's still going to be that parity where you're still going to get the spread around schools. But he's saying that, nope, the kids from impoverished situations are going to go to the schools that are going to be paying, and then you're not going to get that team quality. You're going to get that me quality, which can ruin locker rooms. We've seen it at the pro level when people stop buying into the team and start buying into just themselves. He made a very passionate plea. A lot of people are coming at him, saying that he's pulling the race card and he doesn't know what it's like, yada, yada, yada. But I see where he's coming from, but I think he's going to be on the wrong side of this argument. He just sees it a different way. He sees it as the team. He sees it as we don't need to pay. We don't need to get paid. We're doing this because we love it, and we're still grinding to the NFL. Whereas if we get paid now, we might not push as hard to get to the NFL. So I see where he's coming from. I just think he's on the wrong side of it.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think from listening to his interview, I think he was also a little bit misguided because he did say, oh, kids are only going to go to the places that are going to pay them the most, right? And so, yeah, like California right now is the only spot that is paying, right? But again, it's not the schools that are handing out the money, right? So it's not like somebody's going to actually get offered more necessarily, right, for playing any one place. And so if they're a really good quarterback, right, they're going to get endorsement offers, not necessarily the teams that have the most money. And I think he tried to make that argument of, oh, it'll be the teams that have the most money is where kids will go. It's not necessarily true in that respect. The other thing is, Tim Tebow was talking about the passion behind college sports. I think that passion's always going to be there. Like, everybody's still proud of their school. You're going to see the stadiums are going to be packed. Might there be some slight decrease in the quality of play? Possibly. But I think for the most part, you're still going to see that passion. You're still going to have the crazy, fanatic, fans that are tailgating and painting their bodies, whatever their team color is. So I think Tim Tebow, I get sort of where he's coming from, but at the same time, I don't agree with a lot of his arguments.
My last statement on this is we're one step closer to NCAA football coming back for PlayStation, Xbox, or whatever. I cannot wait to play the mascot mode again. That was the best part of having the college football game. This is just one step to getting back to that. So if you're a gamer, you want to get behind this, but I just like that arm of the argument here.
Yeah, no, I definitely like that. I mean, I guess, so I know we're wrapping up on this segment. The one last thing that I'll add is so I totally agree that we should, lighten up on Tebow. He's a great guy. And, from all accounts and everything I've heard, he's a fantastic human being. The other thing that I had a problem, though, with what he mentioned, though, is he said, you should be loyal to your team. You should be loyal to the school. But one of the problems I see, though, is that the schools aren't loyal to the players, right? If you tear your ACL, it's like they might pay for insurance and help you get treated. But outside of that, like if your career is over, they 100% will replace you at whatever position you're at, or they'll always recruit over you. So you could be the number one recruit at quarterback. Your school's not loyal to you. They're going to be trying to get a Jalen Hurts, right, and a Tua and whoever else. If they can recruit, 5 superior quarterbacks, they're going to do it. And so part of the argument that Tebow is trying to make is, hey, these guys need to be loyal to their school. That should be their pride. But the school's not loyal to them. And 100%, you could be the best quarterback in the country and they're still going to recruit another quarterback that they think might replace you, in week 2.
Before I move on, I should mention that the NCAA has made things a little easier for players to move on from their universities if they do get cut, like a Kelly Bryant or a Justin Fields has the ability to move to another school given the shortened transfer window. And a lot of players are being able to use that, so it's slightly more player-friendly. That's a movement we've seen just in general throughout sports. But let's focus in between the lines this coming Saturday. So college football, we're moving into week 4 of the season. So Oklahoma is not going to be in one of the premier games this weekend. But so far, Jalen Hurts is making his case as a Heisman candidate. So the last time we had Aris on the show, we were kind of talking about Heisman candidates, where we saw it going. And Aris, you made the case that you thought it's Trevor Lawrence's to lose. But right now you have Hurts, who has 13 touchdowns compared to only 12 incompletions. First off, can he sustain that pace? And then secondly, is he now the preferred Heisman Trophy winner?
First, no, he can't continue this pace. Something's going to happen. They're going to get to one of these bigger schools, and he's going to throw a couple interceptions. Somebody's going to drop a pass. But I still think it's Trevor Lawrence's to lose at this point. But instead of it going Trevor Lawrence, Tua, Jalen, and then Jonathan Taylor out of Wisconsin, I think Jalen now passed Tua, and he's nipping at the heels right now. If they make a deep run into the playoffs, that'll definitely help out his case. But they're still an East Coast biased. They tend to want to give it to East Coast guys. If he continues this pace, though, we can be seeing the third quarterback from the same school win the Heisman, which would be awesome. Especially my family would love that because my family is huge Oklahoma fans. But, I mean, at this point, if he continues this pace, it's going to be his Heisman. But I still think in most of the voters' minds, it's Trevor Lawrence first. And he has to do something, either get hurt, have a couple terrible games in order to lose that Heisman.
Well, you mentioned that this would be the third year that an Oklahoma quarterback has won the Heisman if he does pull it down. Do you think that Baker and Kyler winning it hurt his chances? Because otherwise, we're looking at potentially naming the Heisman the Lincoln Riley Award or the Oklahoma Quarterback Award just based off their system.
No, I don't think that it would hurt his chances. If the voters voted against him because of this fact, they should be stripped of their vote right then and there and given to somebody else. I don't think you can vote against somebody because, the person who played at that school prior won the award. Lincoln Riley is now showing he's a better coach than Saban, because look what Hurts is doing at this offense that he wasn't doing at Alabama. He's opened up the field. He's allowing him to throw the ball downfield. He's allowing him to run. He's we didn't see this at Alabama. We knew he was going to be good. We didn't know he was going to be great at Alabama.
Yeah, and I guess coming from Alabama, does that sort of help him and negate Julian's argument a little bit, right? Of that, it's been Oklahoma. But now the voters know, hey, he was also really good at Alabama, right? So not only was he good at Alabama, but he's also been able to be really good at another school, which you don't often see.
Well, I guess my reason for saying it is just because right now the Oklahoma system is proving like the air raid. As far as you mentioning better than Saban, I think that's way too early to make that call, especially because both sides of the ball is what sustained that dynasty throughout the last decade. Right now, we've only been proven that Lincoln Riley is the best offensive coach in the NCAA. We haven't really seen it on the other side, as his defenses couldn't stop a nosebleed.
Well, that conference has typically been a sieve at defense. That's why you get these Bedlam games where they're throwing for 600 yards on either side of the ball with 7 touchdowns in a game. But it was a bit jokingly that I said that, but I mean that you can't really go away from these facts that Jalen Hurts is actually looking like a passer instead of a game manager like he was at Alabama. So, I mean, let's hope he continues this, and we have to eat our words. And my family is super happy because Oklahoma's on their way back to another playoff. But it's going to be a fun Heisman race to watch. Hopefully Jonathan Taylor can continue to put up some numbers, but unfortunately I don't think a running back's going to be able to win it against these three quarterbacks that are up for it. I would love to see Jake Fromm in that conversation at Georgia, but fortunately their offense doesn't throw the ball as much as these other guys do. But it's going to be a fun race. We'll see if Jalen can continue this pace, and if he continues this pace and Trevor Lawrence doesn't have that terrible game against a high-level opponent, or he gets hurt or something like that, it's going to be fun to see the split on those first place votes going to Jalen or going to Trevor Lawrence. So we'll see.
Moving into this weekend's game, so we have some interesting ones. So Michigan at Wisconsin. So right now, under Jim Harbaugh, Michigan is 0-6 when they're the underdog. And they're going into this as a 3.5-point dog to Wisconsin. So when it comes to Wisconsin, they have the number 1 ranked defense in college football right now. And Michigan hasn't looked too good in general. They had to take Army to 2 overtimes to win that game by a field goal. How much pressure is on Jim Harbaugh going into this game?
There's going to be a heck of a lot there. This is the first time in 2 years that they are underdogs, and they're 0-6 right now as underdogs, like you said. If he doesn't win this game, he's officially on the hot seat. No, there's nothing more than that. If he loses this game and they go and lose to Ohio State, I don't know if he can come back from that, because this will be the 6th year that he's lost to Ohio State. So this is going to be a make or break for his career at Michigan.
Yeah, and I think the thing is, right, and we didn't really touch on this when it came to the athletes, but these coaches are getting paid a whole lot of money. But with that comes, a whole lot more expectation. So you're expected to be a national champion, right, or at least play in the national championships. And so when you're constantly losing to an Ohio State, or you're constantly losing within your conference, it can definitely hurt your standing with that school. And Wisconsin is a dangerous game for them. I mean, I know we said they're the number 1 defense in the country right now. They haven't given up a single point, which is incredible to me, right? Like, there's been some teams that are bad teams, right? Like NMSU played against Alabama, which we'll talk about, but NMSU was still able to score against Alabama. Granted, it was probably garbage time. UNM was able to score against Notre Dame. So there's been bad teams that can still score against like some really good teams, but Wisconsin is just looking, like animals.
Okay, so let's throw down some picks here. Where do you see this game going? I'm going with Wisconsin in this game.
I got Wisconsin as well.
Yep, I totally agree. I'm going to take Wisconsin. And you said they're a 3.5-point dog. I think they're going to go over.
Oh, okay. I am going to bet the under. I'm going to say it's a field goal game.
I'll go the over.
Okay. Well, moving on to the next game. So Notre Dame, so they have to fight off the stink of being basically beat up by any school south of the Mason-Dixon line right now. Between their losses to Clemson and then quite a few years back now, their loss to Alabama, this team just gets no respect whenever they have to face a SEC opponent or a tough ACC opponent like Clemson. And right now, when you look at the Vegas betting line for this game, 14.5 for 2 top 10 teams, doesn't that seem a little bit exaggerated? What do you think?
It is a weird line. They're giving them 2 touchdowns plus a hook. So that hook is going to mess with a bunch of people. But it's weird to see a 2-score game for 2 top 10 teams. Maybe they're betting on the fact that they, whenever they go down south, they obviously can't play. I mean, same thing happened when they played Miami, 2-3 years ago when Miami were back game or whatever. They typically don't do very well down there. Maybe that's why they're doing the 2-score game, but it's a weird line. I do have Georgia winning, but I don't think they're going to cover the 14 points. I think maybe they win by 10 points, but Georgia is going to win. Jake Fromm he's a beast. I love the guy. I want him to be on the Chargers next year. A bit biased, but I have Georgia winning this one in a weird game.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Aris. I think Georgia's going to win, though I'm going to take the under. Winning by 14 points over a top 10 opponent is really tough. So I'll take the under.
I'm going to take Georgia too, and I'll take the under, but we should know the last time these two teams played was just a couple years ago in 2017. It's just people keep going back to Notre Dame's futility against like Alabama or against these Southern schools. But, the funny thing about it, they actually didn't lose as bad to Clemson as Alabama did in last year's college football playoffs. It was just they ran into a buzzsaw in Clemson that I think people got to give more respect to. I also want to give a quick shout out to Georgia for their game last week. They played Arkansas State. In these games, you know what you're getting into as the underdog team. You're going to get boat raced out the building. But what they did for Arkansas State head coach Blake Anderson by hosting an impromptu pink out game to raise money for breast cancer awareness after Coach Anderson's wife lost a 2-year battle to breast cancer. Much respect. Got to appreciate that. Go Bulldogs this week.
Very classy move by them.
Very classy move. Next one up, we here have Auburn versus Texas A&M. So 8 versus 17, 3.5-point line right now in A&M's favor. But the road team has won 6 out of the last 7 matchups between these two teams.
I hate these games so much. Just the history behind them. They're always back and forth, back and forth. You never know what's going to happen with these. It's kind of like the Bedlam game, the Oklahoma versus Oklahoma State games, where they're just high-powered. Whoever has the ball last is going to win in these types of games. Let's go with the home team just because of the crowd. Hopefully they can get energized. They can buck that trend of the 6-1. So that's why I'm going to go Texas A&M. This is going to be an awesome game to watch. It's going to be an exciting game to watch, but I hate these games so much.
Yeah, I'm going to actually take Auburn in this one. I think they're ranked number 8 for a reason. Texas A&M is still very good. But like you said, Ju-Ju, even though it's, technically an away game, it's been back and forth on the road between these two teams. And a lot of times the road team ends up winning. So I'm going to take Auburn. And so obviously they would cover that spread.
Moving away from the college game, we're transitioning back into the pros. So it was a bit of a end of an era this past week in the NFL. So we had some major quarterback injuries, a big-time benching. So first off, Drew Brees out for 6 weeks, messed up his thumb. Teddy Bridgewater comes in. We had Big Ben, who's probably going to have Tommy John surgeries, out for the season himself. Mason Rudolph's taking over. And then Eli Manning finally is going to be riding the pine for Daniel Jones. Which out of these 3 headlines would you say is most shocking?
Shocking. I mean, the Breeze injury is going to be shocking because he's always been, kind of an Iron Man ever since he got shipped out of San Diego with that shoulder injury. He's been pretty healthy throughout his stint in New Orleans. Big Ben he's Big Ben. He's getting hit constantly. He was in a walking boot last year. I mean, he takes hits. He was coming up on the record for the most sacked quarterback of all time. I think he's like 17 sacks away from Brett Favre's record. So he gets hit a lot. That one's not too surprising. And then Eli Manning, we all have seen this guy is washed. They benched him prior because they knew he was washed. And then the Maras ran that regime out. So I'm going to say it's the Breeze. It also has the biggest impact because the Saints were going to be a Super Bowl contender this year. And now that they don't have Breeze, they're going to have that mixture of Teddy Bridgewater sprinkling in a little bit more of that Taysom Hill that we see normally, but there's going to get a little bit more of that. Definitely going to hurt their Super Bowl chances this year.
Yeah, I totally agree. I thought the Breeze injury was the most surprising, especially because it was sort of a weird freak incident. It wasn't really a tackle. It was going to block a ball, right? And then a hand just sort of clipped Drew Brees' thumb and really messed it up. So it was a little bit surprising. Ben Roethlisberger, Ju-Ju, I said it in, our predictions sort of towards the start of the season, but he'd only, I think, ever played back-to-back full 16-game seasons once, right? So I figured that he probably was going to get hurt at some point in the season, right? Just statistically speaking, he doesn't hold up very well for a long time. I didn't think it was going to be that bad, though, to where he'd be out for the season. Sucks for him. I am excited for Mason Rudolph, though. I thought he actually looked really good in his time that he was playing. I think he's still going to have his sort of sophomore struggles, but he's looking a lot better. So I'm impressed with him. And then Eli, we've sort of known that it's coming. I think everybody knew going Daniel Jones that high, you're expecting Daniel Jones to be able to come in and possibly start for you if you're picking him at that high of a spot. And so it sucks for Eli. What's interesting, though, I heard he had still said, hey, I'm not waiving my no trade clause. And so they had no choice to bench him. I don't know how true that is, but that's what I had heard.
I don't know. So where do you guys see each of these teams in terms of their future, especially for you, Aris, when it comes to seeing two of those 2004 quarterbacks go bye-bye? Like, are you ready to wrap Philip Rivers in bubble wrap right now?
No. This week is going to be the week that he finally surpasses Eli Manning for that Iron Man award, only to be, second place to Favre, which nobody is ever going to catch because no quarterback is going to play for 30 years straight like he did. I'm actually loving that they're kind of down because Philip Rivers is going to pass them in passing yardage and passing touchdowns, only supplanting his Hall of Fame career even more. Eli getting benched and Big Ben getting benched or getting hurt and out for the year is definitely going to help Philip Rivers, especially, supplant them on the leaderboards. It's going to make the case even more harder to argue against that he's a Hall of Fame quarterback. The only other quarterback that I know of in the NFL to have Tommy John surgery was Jake Delhomme, or is it Jake Delhomme? How do you?
Delhomme's fine.
Let's go Delhomme. He's the only other quarterback that I know of that has had Tommy John surgery. So we're kind of in unprecedented water to see if he can come back from that or not. Eli is done, so I don't know if he's ever going to play again. But Breeze, we'll see how that thumb heals. If the thumb heals good, I think he'll play 1 or 2 more years. But if the thumb's just giving him trouble throughout the rest of the year, I can see him hanging up. He's already 40, does have that Super Bowl. That'll be the only knock against him with that Hall of Fame argument will be the one Super Bowl that's kind of frowned upon in the league of quarterbacks is if you only have one rather than having 2. But I mean, he has the most accurate passer in the NFL. He's a leader in that. He's passing yardage leader. He's coming in on the touchdown leaderboard as well. So we'll see if he can come back and if he stays healthy. I think he'll play 1 or 2 more years. Big Ben, we kind of just got to wait and see on that. How his arm heals because we've only seen it one other time. But sorry, Eli, you're done.
Hopping onto the points that you made, Aris. Yeah, I think Breeze will come back. A thumb ligament. Hopefully, it's nothing too damaging. But as long as he can grip the ball and he gets all his feeling back in that thumb in his hand, I think he's going to come back and try to run it back at least 1 or 2 more years. I think the team that they have right now is really good as it's constructed. Big Ben, though, I worry a little bit. There's already been talks of him wanting to retire, for the past 3 seasons probably. And so one more injury just makes it that much harder. And we saw what it did to Andrew Luck, right? Is these injuries definitely take a toll on you just psychologically and physically. And so a lot of people are saying, no, Big Ben's coming back. And Ben has said, hey, I want to play out my contract. But at the same time, you don't know what it's doing to him psychologically. And he might be saying, hey, look, I've had enough of the surgeries. My arm now hurts all the time. My knees hurt. And so I wouldn't be surprised if Big Ben retires. I think the competitor in him, he's going to want to come back and run it back. But if Mason Rudolph is looking super good too, I think he might call it quits. And then Eli Manning, the really only team that's loyal to Eli is the Giants. I don't even know if there's any other team that would want to trade for him right now.
Yeah, the only other team that would possibly trade for him would be the Jaguars just because of Tom Coughlin, because Tom Coughlin is in love with Eli. I don't see them trading for him because of Gardner Minshew's popularity is blowing up. He looked really good on Thursday, so Eli's probably done. He's just going to finish his career as a backup. But one thing I do want to ask you, Julian, is you're kind of our resident baseball guy. How do pitchers come back from Tommy John? Do they usually come back better, worse, the same? What's kind of your thoughts on that?
I would say more or less the majority of MLB pitchers right now have gone through the surgery and have come back just fine. In fact, there's been plenty of successful pitchers that have had to have multiple Tommy John surgeries. The thing about it is when you talk about the NFL throwing motion, it's not nearly as violent as a prototypical pitcher throwing motion, especially when you have to consider having to throw all at the different angles that pitchers have to do to throw a slider, to throw a curveball, everything of that nature, which tends to be harsher on the elbow. Now, unless you have pretty much a Philip Rivers throwing motion, you're really not really doing that much torque on the elbow itself. So I think that Ben should be able to heal just fine from this injury. He might even be able to come back a little bit better. Like, it's surprising, but a lot of MLB players who have gone through the surgery have said that they come back feeling a little bit stronger. You're essentially taking a ligament from the leg and putting it in the elbow. So that's actually going to improve velocity a little bit more. But we're talking about pitchers in their 20s. We're not talking about a quarterback who's in his 40s. So it's a little bit of an apples to oranges discussion in that regard.
Yeah, you're also not throwing the ball 100 times every 5 days. You're maybe throwing the ball a little bit less than pitchers do, because what's a prototypical pitch count for a starter? It's around 120 pitches usually.
Yeah, more or less. It's really not the same in comparison with this injury. I mean, the surgery is the same. That's not going to change much. But the main thing that's going to come into play here is Ben's age versus a lot of players that typically have this surgery. Overall, I think that's a nice little bow to end this discussion on. We've discussed how kind of like franchise changing those injuries are going to be. Franchise changing the benching of Eli Manning is going to be for the future of the New York Giants. So, I think it's time that we give our weekly Antonio Brown update.
Oh, no.
Because right now, as of 3:30 Central Standard Time, Antonio Brown is no longer a New England Patriot. I'm not even going to touch into the sexual assault charges. We agreed last week that we would kind of not really delve too much into it just because we don't have a lot of information in regards to that. But any lawyer would tell you, you do not text your accuser. You do not tamper with witnesses. This is like lawyering 101, and I'm only an expert in bird law myself. But I think, man, this guy is just so off the deep end. And then to throw his lawyer and his agent into that same group chat with his accuser, like, this guy's mental. He just doesn't get it. And I think it was just a matter of time for the Patriots to release him, especially too when you saw that his release came just a few hours after Bill Belichick walked off of presser.
Yeah, that was a weird press conference. We never really see Belichick sweat in a press conference, and it kind of looked like he was sweating it a little bit. But not only did he get dropped from the Patriots, he also got dropped from Nike. So I really see this guy's career being completely finished.
Ju-Ju, you and we had discussed this before on the podcast, and Aris has been in some of those discussions as well. But the Patriots were sort of the last hope for Antonio Brown, right? Like, if there was an organization that can take a troubled receiver and make it work, it was going to be the New England Patriots, right? Like, they've had guys that have killed people. Their owner's been caught with, prostitutes. Like, there's guys that are on drugs, and yet they're still able to keep everything under wraps, run a tight ship, and still have success. And the fact that you now have Antonio Brown, and like you said, like, he was threatening one of his accusers, which is probably, 101, do not do this, right, when you're going through litigation. And so they had no choice. And the fact that the Patriots of all teams had no choice but to cut you, I think you're basically at the end of your rope. And I don't see, with all of the antics that he's sort of had, this season and off season, I don't see any team really willing to take that risk of saying, hey, Antonio Brown's going to be back either this year or next year.
Yeah, so coming at this, just because obviously we have you on the show, Aris, from a fantasy perspective, is it safe to cut Antonio Brown off your roster right now, or would you still stash him for a few days to see how this plays out?
Yeah, I'd stash him for maybe a week or two just to see how this plays out. You might have a team dumb enough to take this PR hit and bring him back. So, I mean, if you're not hurting for spots, if you have, a couple, one spot to waste, you have enough people to kind of get by this, go ahead and stash him. But he's gone. This is just going to bring back up. Edelman's going to get more work. Gordon's going to get more work. Philip Dorsett, now people were dropping him because he pretty much, Antonio Brown took his spot. Now he's going to come back up. He had 2 touchdowns against Aundre and blew that game up. And now even James White, he's going to get more passing work because they forced him the ball, which is not really like the Patriots. They forced him the ball that first half against Miami. So now Tom Brady's going to get back to Tom Brady being able to spread the ball around, take advantage of those matchups. So The guys that took a hit now essentially are just back to their original spot. Take a flyer on Dorsett. James White's going to come back up. Gordon's going to come back up. Edelman's going to come back up.
So with that said, are you going to consider fading Tom Brady in your rankings a little bit too, considering that a lot of Brady's like renaissance in his value moving back up the quarterback rankings has been based off the addition of Antonio Brown. So now that Brown's gone and they go back to the original set of weapons they had to begin the season, do we consider moving Brady a little bit down?
Yeah, he only drops a few until he plays Miami again, then drops right back up or jumps right back up to the number one quarterback that week. But, yeah, he's going to take a slight hit. You know, he's not going to drop out of the top 10, top 15. He's still going to be a reputable starter for most 12 league teams. He's not going to take a huge hit, but he'll take a slight hit there.
Okay, and now my question, so moving back into the real-life football ramifications of this. So, Aundre, you had the Patriots listed as your number one team in your power rankings. So did I. Now, it's going to be interesting to see, do we put them behind Kansas City again? Because a lot of why people moved the Patriots above Kansas City, why they leapfrogged them, was because, again, the addition of Antonio Brown was supposed to be world-breaking, game-changing here. Now that he's gone and the Chiefs are eyeballing Jalen Ramsey, are we considering moving the Chiefs back up to number one?
Yeah, so I'm definitely considering it. If Jalen Ramsey actually does go to the Chiefs, right, they're going to have a really, really solid team. Right now, I'm still going to leave the Patriots where they're at, right? They look very complete. The Chiefs struggled a little bit in that first quarter with Oakland. I know they ended up coming back and easily winning it and cruising to a win, but that was still just slightly concerning, whereas the Patriots haven't really struggled with anybody. And the Steelers, a lot of people had them still picked to possibly even, make the playoffs as a wild card, and they dismantled them. The win over the Dolphins, I'm not going to give any significance to because I think anybody could beat the Dolphins. But I still think the Patriots right now, I'm going to leave them number one. What about you?
And fortunately, too, we're not going to really learn much about them this week either, as they're facing the New York Jets again with their mono-ridden quarterback. So it's hard to really make any sense out of that. I mean, going into that game against the Jets, the line I checked just a couple of hours ago was 21.5. I don't know how Antonio Brown moving off this team really affects it, but I don't know. Just, I guess, to put a bookend on kind of like this Antonio Brown saga for the time being, we're going to learn more about his litigation here moving forward because we're not really going to learn much about Antonio Brown, the player, moving forward for a while. I think this guy just needs to seriously reflect on his life a little bit because this last 5 months has just been insane. It has been unprecedented, and I have never seen any kind of firestorm like I've seen for one individual player. I don't know who has to do more work, Drew Rosenhaus's agent or the press house secretary for the White House, because right now it's an even tie. So I don't know, man. I think we need to just stop talking about Antonio Brown for a while.
Yeah, hopefully we can, because so far this has been the Antonio Brown show, not the Slumpbuster podcast. So
the sad part is he just comes up with a new headline each week. It's not like we're talking about old stuff necessarily with him. All right, I think I am ready to finally sit down and look at our picks for this coming weekend. So this week I had a big bounce back week. 12-4. Dre finished 9-7. I have a 2-game lead at 21-11. Dre, you're sitting at 19-13. How do you feel about your week 2?
I'm still, winning as far as picks, right? I'm above 500. Don't worry, I'll catch up, Ju-Ju. I'll be just fine.
Well, going through the Twitter thread, I guess I just got so used to putting a red X next to your name that I just started to develop the habit. So thank you for checking me on that.
Yes, this was a huge controversy.
Yeah.
Blowing up because Aundre was super mad.
Yeah. So just so the viewers or listeners, know what we're talking about is we're going back and forth this weekend and Juju's like, oh, I want another pick. You lost. I want another pick. You lost. And like 5 of them Ju-Ju had wrong because they were not the picks that I had. I was like, no, I know for a fact that I did not choose these guys to lose. So Juju's trying to cheat. In fact, I better go back through and check these records again. So I might not actually be down by 2 games.
I mean, I've been watching Bill Belichick and Tom Brady for years. You just pick up a thing or two. Anyway, So let's move into the actual games. We didn't actually officially make a pick, but I'm pretty sure we were both picking the Titans last night, unless I'm wrong. So with that said, the Titans ended up losing to the Jaguars 20-7. Marcus Mariota looked terrible right now in a contract year. Doesn't speak well for his long-term staying power in Tennessee. And then obviously a big headline this week was Jalen Ramsey wanting out of Jacksonville. What do you make of that matchup real quick? I mean, it wasn't the most exciting game in the world, so we don't need to touch on it a ton, but just light recap.
Yeah, so Jacksonville for me, I was actually surprised that they won by that much. I had Jacksonville possibly winning. The Titans, I think, are good, maybe slightly even underrated, but I was surprised that the Jaguars were able to win by that much.
Like I said, it's disappointing when you look at it from a Marcus Mariota standpoint. This guy really needed to play up this year, and I don't know what to make of Tennessee right now. So they come out with that big week 1, blow the Browns out of the water, and then they come out flat the next 2 weeks against the Colts and the Jaguars. This team still has a good defense, and I don't know. They're just going to be one of those average teams. I go back to where I ranked them kind of to begin the season. I had them as a 6-10 team. Moved on up to 7-9 after Andrew Luck's retirement, but I think that's just right about where they sit because week to week they're so inconsistent.
Yeah, I think they're going to fall into the trap that the Dolphins were in, where Tannehill's good enough to keep them competitive, but not good enough to compete for anything. That's exactly where the Titans are right now. A mediocre quarterback who's good enough to get him into the playoffs every now and again, but not good enough to actually make a run at the Super Bowl.
Paying mind to my co-host time right now too. I know Dre, you have to start heading out soon, so we're just going to rapid fire through the picks here soon. Aris, if you'd be so kind, would you carry us through these picks, set up the games for us?
Yeah. So we got the Bengals at the Bills. Bills are -6.
You could go first, Ju-Ju, and then I'll take the next one.
Okay. So yeah, we'll just trade off here. Bengals at the Bills right now. I think 6-point line. I'm going to take the Bills. And I'm actually going to go over because when I looked at the Bengals last week, they didn't really do a whole lot on offense. Obviously, the Niners blew them out of the water, which I was pretty happy about. And then Josh Allen, I mean, this guy has really come out swinging this year. Bills Mafia, give me the Bills, give me the points.
Okay, yeah, so I totally agree. I think the Bills are going to win. Josh Allen's looking really good. However, I don't think they're going to cover that spread. I'm going to take the Bills, but I'll take the under.
All right. I think we know who the next game who you guys are going to pick because it is the Dolphins at the Cowboys. Cowboys are -23. Are any of you guys picking the Dolphins real quick?
No, not going to happen. And in fact, so we introduced this with the listeners last week. I'm going to take the Cowboys, and this will be my lock of the week.
Lock of the week. Just to reemphasize what lock of the week is essentially Aundre, if he gets this right, which suggestions say he probably will, he will get +2 in the rankings. If the Dolphins pull off a Miami Miracle, he would have -2. But in fairness, I'm going to give it to them. I'm going to go with the Cowboys too. 23 points. Here's the thing about the Dolphins. So I bet the under the last 2 weeks because the lines have been so ridiculous that a 23-point line tells me that I have to bet the under again. But this team is so bad. I just am so conflicted here. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt again. I'm going to bet the under just because 23 points at the NFL is so absurd in general. So I'm going to go with the Cowboys, but give me the under.
Yeah, it's absurd. I'd take the over, though. Sorry, Aris. Sorry.
We're getting into that part of the year where the Cowboys are going to be 3-0. They're going to play 3 garbage teams. And Cowboys fans are going to be like, it's our year. It's our year. We're going to win this. Dak MVP. So Cowboys fans, just simmer down. You haven't played anybody yet. You've played the Dolphins and the Giants and the Redskins. Simmer down. All right, next game we have Broncos at Packers. Packers are a 7.5 favorite. Who you got?
All right, so going into it, Broncos versus the Packers. I picked the Broncos last week, and I was right up until the last 30 seconds of the game when they decided to lose on an Eddie Pinheiro 54-yard field goal. With that said, this offense has looked terrible the last few weeks. It's not going to get much better going on the road, especially with how the Packers have been playing. Go ahead and give me the Packers, and I'm actually going to go under on this one.
Yep, I agree 100%. I think the Packers have not looked super great, so that's why I'm not going to take the over for them. But I still think they look better than the Broncos, enough to say that I think they'll win. But I do think it'll be under.
All right. Next, we got Falcons at the Colts. Colts are a 1.5-point favorite.
I think I'm going to take the Falcons still. I know the Colts are favored, but you got Matt Ryan, is a fantastic. Julio Jones is right there. The Falcons have been a little bit hard to read this season. They're not as good as I had thought that they were going to be, but at the same time, they don't necessarily look like too bad in some other points, So I'm going to still take the Falcons, and obviously, they'll cover that spread if they win.
I think the Falcons as well, just because when I look at this team, they're coming off a big victory in Philadelphia. We haven't even seen the best version of this team right now. Obviously, Matty Ice decided to throw 3 picks last week against the Eagles. Give me them, especially since they're playing a bit of a softer defense in the Colts. I don't know, still don't know what to make of the Colts just yet, but especially coming off giving everything to the Chargers in week 1 and then actually winning against Tennessee last week on the road. So hard team to read. I'm still going with the Falcons though.
Yeah, this is the smallest spread of the week, so it's basically a pick 'em. So it's bound to be a close game, especially Falcons I don't know what's going on with them right now. So now we have probably the game of the week, Ravens at the Chiefs. Chiefs are a 5.5-point favorite. Who you got?
Okay, when it comes to the Chiefs and the Ravens, so the Ravens haven't really played anyone right now. They played the Dolphins, they played the Cardinals. I think the Chiefs, that offense, it's so hard to slow down. Just go ahead and give me the Chiefs. I picked them to go 14-2, so I'm just going with my record at this point. Give me them, and I'm going to bet the over.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think this is a big game actually for the Ravens. So I think no matter what, the Ravens are going to lose, but it's going to show us just how good they actually are. And so if they can compete well with the Chiefs, I think it'll prove how high everybody's ranking them, sort of in, the power rankings just around the internet. I still, am hesitant to think that the Ravens will do that great just because they haven't really played anybody. So I'm still taking the Chiefs. I'll take the over.
All righty. So next we have the Raiders going to Minnesota to face the master thief in Kirk Cousins. This is a 9.5-point favorite for the Vikings. So you guys got?
Yeah, so I'm going to take Minnesota. I'm going to take the over. I think they're just the all-around better team. I still think the Raiders are also in sort of this weird sort of tank mode that we don't want to make it exactly look like tanking. They've actually been doing better than I thought they would do this season. But still, I think Minnesota's going to win.
When I consider these two teams, Derek Carr's just inability to throw downfield, his dinking and dacking, as it used to be called, will not play well against the Vikings. I think I'm going to go with the Vikings. I'm going to bet the over on a 9.5-point line because I do think that this is going to be a bad game for the Raiders. They have to go East Coast for this one. And the Vikings, as long as they don't let Kirk Cousins throw the ball more than 10 times, I think they'll be fine.
No. He needs to throw the ball more than 10 times because I have Stephon Diggs on a fantasy team. Throw the ball, guys. All right, next we have Jets at the Patriots. Patriots are a 21.5-point favorite. Jets are wheeling in a fifth-string quarterback at this point for this game. Are either of you guys going Jets and lost your mind here?
No. Short answer, no. It'll be the Patriots, and I have no doubt about that. Though I might take the under on that, but I could see them racking up more than 21 points, 22 points.
Regardless of distractions from the whole A-B dilemma of the Patriots team, let's face it, the only winner here is going to be mononucleosis. I'm going to go ahead and go with the Patriots. And, God, do I want to also go over on this one? I'm going to say no. I'm going to bet the under. I think the Patriots might pull back a little bit as far as, do they want to legitimately blow out the Jets? I'm going to go Patriots and the under.
Right. Next, we have the Lions at the Eagles. Eagles are a 6-point favorite. Who you got?
Okay, so looking at this game, so the Lions are actually a popular upset pick in this matchup just because of all the injuries, everything that was going on with the Eagles this past week. But they're coming off a big victory against, I forget which team that was. Remind me, Aris, who did the Lions beat last week?
Who? Huh? What? Andre, did you hear something?
It doesn't matter. Whatever. Anyway, you know what? I am going to go with the Lions this week.
Well,
They're going to be my upset pick against the Eagles.
Okay, so one, for the sake of being different, I think we've had most of the same picks. I don't think lightning is going to strike twice for this team, so I'm going to take the Eagles. I don't think the Lions will be able to upset the Eagles at home. Though I had the Eagles winning pretty much right around there, so I'll take the slight over and say, no, the Eagles actually haven't looked that good. I'll take the under.
All right. So next game, probably had people choosing one side, but now after the news that Cam Newton's not going to be playing, people are probably going to be picking the other side. Panthers at the Cardinals. Cardinals are a 2-point favorites. Did this Cam injury kind of sway you guys at all?
I had originally Carolina winning, but barely. But now I like what Kyler Murray's been doing. I think he's on a bad team, but he still looks really good. And they've played a lot better than I thought that they would, right? Even against the Lions. And so I think the Cardinals are going to win this one. And 2 points, it's hard to take the under, so I guess I'll go the over on that one.
You mentioned that, and we mentioned it last week, Vegas with these 2-point lines, but Vegas is insane, man. In that Bears game. So obviously that game got swayed on a field goal. And it only really mattered because of a missed extra point. They bet 2 points on that, and they've got it.
It's true. They know what they're doing.
Yeah, the Broncos game, that was
So in terms of this game here, Kyler Murray's actually been a little bit more impressive than I thought ever since he kind of figured things out late in that week 1 game against the Lions. And then you're talking about the Panthers team that they're coming off a rough Thursday night. Granted, they've had a lot of time to rest up for this game.
No Cam, though.
But they got Kyle Allen. You know what? I'm going to take the Panthers in an upset.
All righty. This game's probably going to be the worst played game this weekend. I don't know if it's possible for both teams to lose a game at the same time that are playing each other. We have the Giants at the Bucks. Bucks are a 6-point favorite. Rookie debut. Jameis on a contract year. I'm not watching this game. I'm sorry.
Okay. Well, it's going to be interesting to see who plays more like a rookie, Daniel Jones or Jameis. But I'm going to go I've heard this is a popular upset pick, so I'm going to take the Giants actually. Now, I think that it's just a matter of being re-energized because they were playing just, they had a little bit of malaise with Eli Manning over these last couple of years. So even though I don't think Daniel Jones is going to have an amazing rookie season, I've said as much on previous podcasts, I think this could be at least his shining debut. So go ahead and give me the Giants in this matchup.
No, I'm going to take the safe pick. I'm going to go Buccaneers. I think Jameis just has the experience. Arians, I think, is a better coach. So I'm going to take the Buccaneers. Daniel Jones did look good in the preseason, a lot better than I thought he would, but I don't think he pulls it off.
So next, this one probably swayed a lot of people too. Saints at the Seahawks. The Seahawks are now a 4-point favorite with the injury to Drew Brees. Who do you guys like in here?
I'm going to take the Seahawks on this one. Sucks that Drew Brees is out. I know Bridgewater has, obviously played at the NFL level before, but the Seahawks at home, right, one of the loudest stadiums on the planet. I've got the Seahawks, and I think it will be a close game, but I'll take the over.
If I'm not mistaken, I want to say that Teddy Bridgewater's last big game for the Vikings was playing this same Seahawks team in the playoffs, and that was the game that infamously Blair Walsh missed the field goal. I'm going to go ahead and go with the Seahawks just because I love Teddy Bridgewater, and I think his long-term future is going to be just fine. But first game, 12th man, it just doesn't line up very good for the Saints overall. So I'm going to go with the Seahawks, and I'm going to go ahead and give them the points.
This is going to determine our friendship. This will determine our friendship. and this will determine if I continue to do this with you guys. The Texans at the Chargers. Chargers are a 3-point favorite. Our kicker is actually maybe going to play this week. He doomed us last week. We had our punter kicking field goals. Otherwise, we would have won that game. Thank you very much. So, who do you got in the soccer stadium in Carson, California? You better say the Chargers.
I could take this one. I will actually go the no, I'm going Texans.
Aundre.
I'll go the Texans. I think they're gonna win. I think the Chargers will bounce back from the week that they had last week, but I still go the Texans. I think they're the better team right now.
Well, Aris, at least we can still be friends. I'm going to go ahead and take the Chargers.
Let's go.
Here's the thing, though. Let's face it. The Carson Stadium as itself is not the greatest home field advantage. And the Texans are a good team. So I'm going to actually just stick right at what Vegas has and go ahead and go Chargers. And I say they live up to that 3-point line.
All right. So we're going to skip one game. Just save that one for last. You'll see why here in a second. We're going to go to the Sunday night game. Rams at the Browns. Rams are a 3-point favorite. Who are you guys going with here?
Okay, so this is going to be a big week for the Browns because it's basically a prove-it week. So they beat the Sam Darnold-less New York Jets last week. No one really cared about that matchup. We didn't really make heads or tails about how good this team's going to be long-term heading into the future. And then, obviously, they got, like I said, both raced out of the stadium by Tennessee. So can they live up to a big-time game Sunday night against the Rams? First time the Browns have been on Sunday Night Football in years. I'm going to say no. I'm going to go with the second LA team to win this week. I'm going to say the Rams go big on the road. That offensive line has looked bad, and I think Aaron Donald's going to have a field day.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think the Rams are just the all-around better team. The Browns have not impressed me all that much this season, and so I'm taking the Rams, and I'll take the over.
Yeah, I'll take the over as well.
All right, Monday night game, Bears at the Redskins. Bears are a 4-point favorite coming off that Eddie Pinheiro field goal kick. They're loving life right now. Who do you guys got?
Yeah, so I'm going to take the Bears, though I think it's going to be another close game. Their offense just looks awful. Trubisky can't do a whole lot right now. I'm going to take the Bears. I think the Redskins are not the best team in the world, so I'm going to take the over, but I don't see the Bears blowing out the Redskins.
This is a rough Monday night game. This is not going to be fun to watch, especially from the offensive point of view. So I'm going to pick the Redskins in an upset pick because the one thing I can say about the Redskins, they look competitive against the Eagles in week 1. They played all right against the Cowboys, who I consider to be one of the better teams in the league. And when I look at what the Bears have done so far, they looked completely lost on offense against the Packers, and they looked even worse somehow against the Broncos the following week. I don't believe in Mitch Trubisky right now, so I got to go with the Redskins. I think that they have enough defensive pieces to make it interesting.
All right, so now we're coming to the last game. This is a Sunday afternoon game, so we just had to skip it. I think only in fairness, Julian, you have to pick the home team. Aundre, you have to pick the away team. In fairness, because it is Aundre's Steelers going to Ju-Ju's Niners.
Oh, you forgot to mention my 2-0 Niners. Thank you very much.
And my 0-2 Steelers.
We don't care
That being said, I'm going the Steelers. Mason Rudolph looked all right. That one interception that he had was not his fault, right? That was Dante Moncrief's fault, 100%. I'm going Mason Rudolph, and I think the Steelers are going to win.
Well, I'm going to go ahead with my boys here. It's a big week for them, 2-0, heading into a bye week after this. I'm going to take them, but I'm actually going to bet the under because I think their young teams, giving them a 6.5-point line is a little irresponsible at this point by Vegas. So give me the Niners, give me the under.
Yeah, you guys didn't let me get that because you were so ready to get to defending your team. So
people are sleeping on us now. I think we're not as good without Big Ben, but I still think Mason Rudolph can show what he's got. I think he's going to be fine.
Can I give one note on the Steelers, though? You think Le'Veon Bell is just kind of like watching what's going on with Antonio Brown right now and watching what happened to Ben Roethlisberger right now. And I just have that visualization of that one sock puppet meme that just kind of like slowly looking at the camera like.
Yeah, he's the only killer bee left at this point, so.
All right, guys. So I'm out of time. I actually got to get going, but I appreciate both of you. Ju-Ju, good luck. I think the Steelers will still beat you guys. I'm going to sign off. See you guys.
Shots fired.
Well, it looks like it's just you and me, Aris, for the rest of this podcast.
And
so
we have the best game coming up.
So we're going to do something special for all our viewers / listeners here in New Mexico. The Rio Grande Rivalry. It's the greatest rivalry in sports, guys. Don't let anyone tell you anything different. My alma mater, the New Mexico State Aggies, are heading 3 hours north to take on the University of New Mexico Lobos. This game, an absolute bloodbath. The Iron Ball doesn't hold a candle.
Nope.
Ohio State wishes they could. And the Red River is just basically a stream compared to the Rio Grande.
Preach.
Win or lose, though, we'll buy a keg of booze and we'll drink it to the Aggies till we wobble in our shoes. # guns up. Monologue ended.
Put your guns down. Everybody knows everybody's a Lobo. All right.
Listen, I'm an Aggie because I actually applied. Everyone's a Lobo because they went to Walmart and bought a shirt.
Hey, I went to UNM, okay? I went there.
Your mom went to college.
What?
Your mom went to college.
Your mom went to college. Everybody's a Lobo. This is the best tailgate in town. Nobody holds a candle to the way we party down here for this historic rivalry.
But I said it in introducing this game. Does your team have buying a keg of booze in their fight song? I don't think so.
No, we burn.
We're the only team in the country that has alcohol related to our fight song, because that's how hard we party down in Las Cruces, New Mexico. If you haven't taken a trip, probably don't, because there's better places to travel. But
Yeah, right.
Anyway, let's talk about this game here, man. So, all right, this is going to be the 110th time that these two teams are going to meet. Honestly, in terms of New Mexico, the Las Cruces High School Mayfield rivalry gets more national attention than these two teams. This game really only means something to the alumni and the players on each team themselves. And speaking on those teams, so Aggies 0-3 so far, but they haven't had the greatest schedule for them in the world. So they went on the road to face Washington State, number 23 in the country, lost 58-7. They went on the road to face Alabama, 55-point line. On the bright side, hey, they went under that. They only lost 62-10. Then they decided to face San Diego State. Former UNM head coach Rocky Long also had his way with them. That's a 31-10 victory for them. Now, when it comes to the UNM side of things, so they also got to face a ranked opponent here in the first few weeks. They went on the road to South Bend, Indiana, face Notre Dame. And, hey, they weren't so lucky when it comes to the Vegas betting line. 35-point favorite Notre Dame ended up winning 66-14. They do have victory, though, out of these two teams. They beat Sam Houston for whatever that's worth.
Pretty much you go to this game for the tailgate. Historically, especially a couple years ago when we were both ranked number 1 and number 2 in the worst college D1 programs in the nation. And now all of a sudden our old head coach is running offenses going crazy in Alabama where he couldn't do anything over here at UNM.
I'm pretty sure the only thing Mike Locksley beat while he was at UNM was his other coaches.
Yeah, like we said, this is a game you go for the tailgate party and the parties afterwards. It is a big rivalry, but it's also a time to come together with especially like you, we went to the same high school. You went away for college. We always either travel to Cruces or travel from Cruces to Albuquerque. So we always have some nice little parties, get-togethers after the game, before the game. So this is more of I talk crap to your buddy and then hang out and catch up afterwards.
Yeah, so looking at the all-time series right now, UNM has a commanding lead, 71-33, and with 5 ties, which let's ignore the fact that ties were such a big thing in early football. That's where the series stands. UNM's a 4.5-point favorite right now for this game. In the last 3 years, NMSU's managed to pull down a couple victories, specifically ever since we got our head coach, Doug Martin, over there. Though a couple of those victories were when we had a very senior-driven team, whether that included Larry Rose III or Rogers, their QB, Terrell Hanks, players like that. They're all gone now. So right now, this team's they're hurting. I mean, they're tied with Hawaii for the worst turnover margin in college football. Doesn't help again when you're playing a Nick Saban defense in week 2, but still, they need to fix that if they want to have any chance in this game, really. When it comes to UNM, so they're going to be on their 3rd starting quarterback this year. Not necessarily their 3rd stringer, just this guy, Tavaka Toyoti?
I don't
I've
know.
heard that name pronounced. I haven't. He went 6 for 13 against Notre Dame last week, 132 yards. He did lead a scoring drive. I don't know. What do you think?
I wish we would get back to the way we were 2 years ago, where we had the best rushing team in the country. We had the most runs over 20 yards, most runs over 30 yards, most runs over 40 yards, most runs over 50 yards, 60 yards, 70 yards. I can go on that. So typically we can't really get high-end athletes out here in the Mountain West. You guys are still in the WAC, correct?
Actually, no. We're independent this year. I almost forgot.
Oh, you guys are independent. Okay.
Yeah, that's why we have such a unique schedule right now in terms of who we're playing.
Yeah, so typically it's a little bit harder, smaller state, to get bigger name people. So typically you run more unique offenses, you run more running plays. You don't really aerate the ball as much because the top recruits usually out of the state will try to go to, Texas, Colorado, Arizona. If we can get back to running the ball the way Bob Davie, when he first came in, established that run, he established that hard-nosed culture, I think we can win this game. You guys typically beat us when it comes to shootouts. If we can grind this one out, I think we can win this one for us.
Well, it's going to be hard to do that when you consider that UNM right now, through their first couple games, is allowing over 48 points a game. So neither of these teams are built to stop anyone defensively. And for UNM side of things, Bob Davies is actually going to be out this game. He's been dealing with medical issues for the last few weeks. Like we mentioned on a previous show, we send our best regards to him. Like even from an Aggie perspective, only want the best for your health, Coach Davies. So good luck out there. But he's not going to be on the sidelines for this game, which is going to be a big coup for New Mexico State, especially since Bob Davies was 5-2 in this matchup over the last 7 years.
Yeah, I think they are going to want to play. It is something to be said when your coach is going through something or you have a player going through something. The team wants to rally a little bit harder. They want to play for everybody a little bit harder than normal. I do think they can come together, play for Davie. It's going to be a big thing for us down here.
Even besides what's going on with Davies, too, their quarterback, mentioned earlier, Tavaka, he is actually going to have to leave right after this game immediately to go to his grandfather's funeral. So, again, best for his families. But I feel like that emotional pressure, too, can really impact a player. Not everyone can play like Brett Favre on Monday Night Football.
Yeah, I was just about to bring that up, too, that Favre Monday night game against the Raiders where he just lost his dad, came out, and he played like crazy. It seems like it's a sad part of the game, but whenever a player loses somebody, they come out and they usually have the best game of their life because they're playing for a little bit more. They're playing for their family. They're wanting to show that they meant something to them because they're giving this game to them. We have fate on our side on this one.
Fate on your side. Okay, well, fun breaking this down, though, from a New Mexico perspective. I mean, I haven't really talked to Aggie since I was a sports writer at my university. So if you really want to know joy, imagine covering a team in the midst of an 18-game losing streak, Aaron. That was probably the most painful time in my life. Craft breweries were rampant throughout Cruces.
We're in the same spot, though, so.
Damn beer made me fat. Now, that and pizza. It's kind of a mixed race. Anyway, so as far as this game goes, predictions?
I think we're going to win. I think we're going to blow you guys out 100-0, 102-0. My bad.
100-0. I mean, I think Vegas, you're saying Vegas just has this all wrong. Well.
Okay, look, you're always irrational when it comes to your rival, okay?
Gotcha.
I do have us winning.
I think your mom probably knocked the sense out of you in this past fantasy matchup. I'm going to go ahead and pick the Aggies to, win. And yeah,
I think we'll cover. But quick question is, what's the bigger rivalry for us? Is it the football game or is it the basketball game? Because I feel like we get up a little bit more for the basketball games. We have more success with them.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's no question. New Mexico as a whole is definitely more of a basketball state when it comes down to it. Maybe it's just because we haven't had much success, if any, in football. But definitely you can tell that the fan bases for basketball do get more energized when that matchup comes on the slate of games. And, hey, I love going back to the home state to talk some sports every now and then. So maybe like in future episodes, we'll do a quick aside for our New Mexico listeners. We understand you're the bulk of our audience right now, just coming from our hometowns. We appreciate you, and that's why we took the extra time to do this segment for you guys. Go Aggies.
Go Lobos.
Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.